Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. The US Congress has failed to extend the funding of the Global Engagement Center, GEC, a State Department unit dedicated to tracking and countering disinformation from US rivals. The GEC had an annual budget of $61 million and has long faced scrutiny from Republican lawmakers who accused it of censoring and surveying Americans. Elon Musk accused the GEC of being the worst offender in US government censorship and media manipulation and called the agency a threat to our democracy. Well, to explore the implications of this shutdown, I'm joined by Ivana Stradner, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and a regular contributor. Ivana, hello and welcome back to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Ivana. Okay, so what's going on here? GEC is not being funded by the Republicans. They're saying that, well, it's been used to survey American citizens. What do you know? What can you tell us?
Well, the Global Engagement Center, unfortunately, will not continue to operate due to the lack of funding. And in my view, that's a very, very bad news. Look, the Global Engagement Center is not panacea to cure all these information campaigns that are happening here in the United States, information operations that are coming directly from Russia, China, and Iran. However, that particular institution has done quite a good job at exposing specifically Russian and Chinese influence operations. One of the most polarizing things in the United States right now, it is indeed the question of what I like to call the attack on free speech. And some Republicans thought that the Global Engagement Center was indeed linked to some nefarious activities going after conservative voices. The Global Engagement Center certainly, they made, some contracts. There were a couple of Republicans dissatisfied with that decision. But that's not the purpose of the Global Engagement Center. They are not going after domestic free speech, and they're not going after the Americans. The purpose of the Global Engagement Center has been indeed to expose foreign influence operations and foreign malign activities. They wrote numerous reports. They were very successful in exposing Russia's activities related to bioweapons, China's influence operations. They partner with numerous countries globally. We already saw what happened recently, in Moldova, where Russia was involved trying to overthrow the government and conducted massive influence operations over there. The Global Engagement Center exposed their activities. So in my view, this is a very, very, very bad day for America's fight of influence operations.
Understood, Ivana, now, I think no one disputes that both both Russia and China are carrying out hybrid warfare, including disinformation and misinformation. And so a body like the GEC seems to be an obvious necessity. What's going to replace the work it does?
So the Global Engagement Center has not been involved in offensive influence operations. Their ultimate goal has always been to expose activities. Like in all other countries, we have our military and intelligence that are also working, in this field. So it's not that we are completely without such agency. However, the most important thing is also to have something like a strategic communications center similar to the Global Engagement Center, and maybe to open under a new name or provide, different institution that can expose foreign malign activities in the United States. Look, we just had elections here in the United States, and our intelligence warned multiple times about Russia's, China's, and Iran involvement in influence operations. And make no mistake, our adversaries are not going to stop here. They're working around the clock, 365 days, polarizing the Americans over contentious issues, whether it's the question of abortion, whether it's the question of social economic issues, whether it's the question of immigration, filling the blanks. It's not only about the elections. So that is precisely why I'm concerned how we are going to continue to fight influence operations coming from abroad. And as I mentioned, it's very, very difficult to fight nowadays as a democracy influence operations coming from authoritarian regimes, because we have to follow certain rules. And we absolutely have to protect America's free speech. It's tremendously important. But we also have to understand how Russia, China, and Iran are also weaponizing free speech domestically, because it should be a bipartisan issue in the United States, understanding how influence operations work, that information is a weapon, and how Russia and China do not need to roll on tanks and jets in Washington, D.C. To challenge the United States. So one of the most powerful weapons that they have been using recently was indeed the weaponization of free speech, because immediately the Russian state media jumped in, claimed that this is the end of American free speech related to TikTok ban. China also jumped into this conversation, claiming that this is the end of his free speech. And it's a very sensitive issue here in the United States, especially for conservatives who have been staunch supporters of free speech. Just as I am, I firmly believe in free speech. That's what makes America truly a wonderful country. But we also have to understand that that's our vulnerability that our adversaries are trying to exploit. And just look at the Russian reporting recently on the Global Engagement Center. They immediately, as the Global Engagement Center was invented, they immediately stated it's a troll factory for America's influence operations, etc. They're already celebrating this, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we shall see what happens to replace the strategic role that the Global Center takes. But you mentioned TikTok, Ivana. Now, again, there seems to be a bit of a conflict as to how, whether it should be closed down or sold to an American-controlled company, and the argument being that it's harvesting data from U.S. citizens for Chinese purposes. Now, Donald Trump, President-elect, of course, has said, well, he's asked the Supreme Court to suspend a decision on that until he's had a chance to look at the political solution. What's going on there? What's the dynamic?
So as you have mentioned, it's very dynamic here in Washington, D.C. these days related to influence operations. And indeed, numerous researchers have already warned about how TikTok has been used as a weapon of the Chinese Communist Party to target people in the West using very, very specific algorithm to not only to spread their propaganda, but to truly use it as a mind weapon. And as I mentioned, just related to the Global Engagement Center, so a similar debate here in the United States is, again, especially among the Republicans about the question of free speech, whether targeting TikTok is another effort to ban and to suspend free speech. We already had numerous rulings about similar issues here in the United States. And in my view, when you have a TikTok that has been indeed used as a weapon, we have to distinguish that from free speech. But the First Amendment, as I mentioned, it's one of the most vulnerable things that we have here in the United States, because that's an easy target for another foreign influence operations to claim, that because we want to ban TikTok, that we are actually suppressing free speech, which is another disinformation campaign.
Indeed, indeed. Now, in its defense, TikTok says, well, all of our data is kept on Oracle servers in the US, and all of the manipulation of that data is done within the US. That's their defense. And surely they have a point, don't they? Or can the Chinese influence what happens on the platform despite that?
So there, as I mentioned, numerous researchers who already expose how their algorithms work and how they're targeting specifically the Americans to spread certain narratives. And if you truly just take a look at how information has been used as a weapon, it tells you all you need to know. Because unless you really, really dive deep into that topic, it's very difficult for people to understand why influence operations are another military tool that have been used by adversaries to target their opponents. Because China has a very different goal from Russia here in the United States. They are not specifically polarizing the United States over the same issues like Russia. They want to portray China as an alternative, as a peaceful nation, that everything is indeed about economy. So their strategic communication is actually very different. But they're also learning from Russia about the tricks, about different groups, how they can also use social media influencers, how they can target specifically the youth. So all of those things are of a serious concern that I hope more and more people in the United States will understand how TikTok has been used as an information weapon.
Understood. Now, one of the arguments from Trump's perspective is that TikTok was a platform that allowed the message, or his message, to get to the youth. And that was influential in getting him into power, and for that reason, perhaps he wants the decision of the Supreme Court to be suspended. Would young people have an alternative to TikTok if it were banned?
I mean, America's youth is not only operating on TikTok. There are multiple other platforms that are available, whether Instagram, there are different platforms such as X. I'm not sure that Facebook is any more popular among the youth, but there are definitely alternatives. And I understand why the president, why Trump, has been supporting in that sense TikTok, but I really also hope that President-elect Trump will also consider other ways that China has been using TikTok to target cognitive processes of America's youth and to spread their propaganda.
Understood. Ivana Stradner, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good day.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.